For 30 years, Sean Combs never asked anyone for anything. He was the one who decided, who got in the room, who got signed, who got the call back. Then he stood in a federal courtroom in New York, in front of a judge who held his entire future in one hand, and he used 3 words to describe himself that nobody who knew him would have believed he was capable of saying out loud. Disgusting, shameful, sick. And then he begged.
Tell nights, as he called them, with his former girlfriends and male escorts. We heard from the music mogul for the first time today. He addressed the court, pleading with the judge for mercy, to give him a second chance, apologizing to his victims and describing his actions as disgusting.
That is a man asking for mercy. Now listen to who he was before that room.
Okay, so very important instructions, okay? I go by the name of Love.
What's up, Love?
We all here in love. It's 4th of July. At my parties, we dance. Like guys dance with girls, and girls dance with guys, and guys dance with guys, and girls dance with girls. But you gotta dance though, okay? That's the shit. So, as I can't even understand if you're not dancing when this shit drops. Drop that.
Same voice, same man. 11 months apart and 2 completely different human beings. What happened in between is worse than most people imagine. Let's start with what is not rumor. What is on the record, in a courtroom, with a stenographer typing every word.
At the federal court building here in New York City, where P. Diddy has just been sentenced to 50 months in prison. So that's 4 years and 2 months in prison. He'll also have to serve 5 years of supervised release and pay a fine of $500,000. And that's related to his
50 months. 4 years and 2 months of federal time, 5 years of supervised release waiting for him on the other side, and a fine of $500,000, which, for a man once described as a billionaire, is not the punishment, it is the receipt. Understand what he was convicted of, because this part gets distorted constantly. The jury convicted him on charges related to transporting people across state lines. The most serious charges, the ones that filled 2 years of headlines, the ones that had entire platforms convinced he would die in prison, the jury acquitted him of those. He walked out of that trial having beaten the charges that would have ended him, and he still got 50 months. That is the detail people keep skipping, because it tells you something about how the judge saw him, not as a man who got unlucky, as a man who got lucky. So he was processed, assigned a number, and moved into a system that has absolutely no interest in who he used to be. And from the moment those doors closed, the stories started coming out. Not all at once, slowly. A leak here, a phone call there. A former inmate who suddenly had a story worth telling.
Yeah. You know, it's funny, Jag, because you mentioned like when you said, hey, I want to learn what the Tutsi was. I didn't know what it was. And you learned about it. And then just last week you hear about Diddy's bodyguard arrested for drugs, paraphernalia. I'm like, okay. It seems to be like everything keeps unraveling slowly but surely.
Slowly but surely. That is exactly how it has gone. Not one explosion, a drip, and every drip has made the picture darker than the one before it. The first stop was the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. If you have never heard of MDC Brooklyn, you would not know what that means. But ask anyone who has actually been inside it and watch their face change. It has a reputation, not a public reputation, an internal one. Federal judges have publicly criticized conditions there. Overcrowding, chaos, staffing problems, lights that reportedly never fully shut off, sound that bounces off concrete with nowhere to go. And Diddy was not placed in some protected celebrity wing, because that wing does not exist. According to reports, he was placed in dorm-style housing, roughly 20 men in one open unit. Read that again. No cell, no walls, no door to close, twin beds, thin mattresses, reportedly no pillows, communal bathrooms where the only thing between you and 20 other men is a curtain, head counts throughout the day, early wake-ups, every phone call monitored, every email read, every movement logged by someone who does not care what your last album sold. Now, reports say the unit did have some small comforts. A gym, board games, air hockey, televisions, a microwave, tablets from commissary, and on paper that sounds survivable. Listen to someone who was actually on that floor.
Nice building that overlooks the river. Floor I was on was the dormitory floor, which was low-level security inmates. and they were in bunk beds spread out throughout the floor. Because I was there longer than a week, I was able to get commissary a couple times. I had use of the computer and the phone. Other than that, there was barely anything to do. Just stuck on this unit all day long.
But I got the chance to come home from MDC, so the things that I experienced are fresh. You know, I didn't forget them, man. And I would always say, because, man, like, it's nothing that I've ever experienced before. I've experienced being in a cell on lockdown and not being fed. I've experienced where they cut the air off and we're in there as two grown men. You know, our cells are basically a bath.
Notice what he emphasizes. It is not the violence. It is not the fear. It is the nothing. Stuck on one unit all day, every day, with nowhere to go and no way to move. He describes losing the air. He describes not being fed. He describes two grown men sharing a space he compares to a bathroom. And this man is describing the low-security dormitory floor, the easy floor. For a man whose entire existence was motion, cities, studios, jets, rooms full of people waiting on him to arrive, that stillness is its own separate sentence, running alongside the one the judge handed down. But federal time is not one thing. It gets worse depending on where they put you and who is already there.
Your daily life like in the Fed prison, because Feds is different from state.
Pretty much different. Constant lockdown, constant stabbing. They are like very, very, very high and strict on respect. They go to PC, a lot of them, because they know if you go out there, they're gonna kill you. Everybody have a knife. When you first get there, when I first got to the USP, the first thing they hit me when I came out there, he said, "Hey, what's up, Trav?" He like, "Man, look, come on in my room, bro." I said, "What's up, man? Keep this knife on you." Everybody got one. He said, "Boy, this is your driver's license right here. Keep this knife on you."
Is that considered a shank?
No, a knife.
A real knife?
Real knife.
Where y'all get real knives from?
Everybody has a knife, not a shank, not something filed down from a food tray, a knife. And when the interviewer asks the obvious question, where do real knives come from inside a federal facility? The answer is not another inmate. That is the environment Sean Combs walked into with the most recognizable face in American music. And according to the reports circulating, he did what powerful men always try to do when they land somewhere new. He tried to buy his way back into control. Word is he was paying other inmates for their phone privileges, stretching 15-minute call limits by borrowing time that was not his, running three-way calls to stay connected to people who were never approved to be on his list. Even locked up, he was still trying to run the room. And for a while, the stories suggest it worked. Reports described a strange dynamic forming around him.
According to you, the inmates are fighting over making his bed.
Yep. Well, really, according to Lisa Evers, I want to give her credit.
Inmates competing over who makes his bed. Whether that is true or exaggerated, the pattern is one you recognize immediately, because it is the same pattern that surrounded him for 30 years on the outside. Access, proximity, approval. Oh, what? That is only me, you say. Embrace. The difference is that on the outside, that dynamic made him untouchable. Inside, it made him a target. Because for every inmate who wanted to be close to him, there was one who wanted to test him. And the reports say it did not take long. Word circulated that Diddy woke up to a knife at his throat. Sit with that image for a second. Not a threat shouted across a unit. Not a warning passed through somebody. A blade at his neck while he was asleep. In an open dormitory with 20 other men and no door and nowhere to run. There is no official confirmation of that incident. What there is what happened immediately after. He was transferred, moved out of MDC Brooklyn and into FCI Fort Dix, a lower security facility. On paper, a softer landing. Reports suggested the pressure would ease. It did not. Because according to people familiar with the system, the transfer did not touch the actual problem. Other inmates tested him early. The assumption was that celebrity meant soft, that celebrity meant protected. That a man who made his money in studios could not handle himself in a room full of people who had nothing left to lose. Anyone who followed his career in the free world knows exactly why that assumption was wrong.
He's not a sucker.
Allegedly.
I mean, we laugh at Diddy and all that, but Diddy's not a sucker. I've seen Diddy grab people, yoke people up in clubs, like with security there. Diddy's no sucker. Like Diddy's, he's with all the ish.
grabbing people, yoking people up in clubs with security standing right there. That was not a rumor about him. That was documented behavior for years in public with cameras present. That energy did not stay outside the walls. And in July, according to reports, it came out. Word is Diddy went at another inmate. Reports describe it as physical, and they describe it as fast. And the facility's response was immediate.
Diddy was placed in solitary confinement because he beat up a man. I was told, literally, the phone call was, hey, Diddy choked the man out. He was placed in solitary confinement yesterday, July 23rd, around 4:00 p.m. And he'll be there for at least 30 days is what I was told. I reached out to Diddy's team. At the time, they knew I was calling, but they still trying to figure it out. They said that they don't know either way, but they didn't dispute my phone call.
What happened though?
So all that I know and all that was mentioned to me, I don't know every detail. Literally, though, I said why. They said, sometimes people think that they can play with him. And I don't know if it's because of all of the reporting around the case or if it's because he's a big celebrity and, they think that he's used to being like protected. But I was told people think that they can play with him. And we've told people don't think that. And
I told people 1,000,001 times.
Yesterday.
Break down exactly what was said there, because this is the single most important moment in this entire story. A journalist receives a phone call. The information is not vague. It is specific. A date. July 23rd, a time, around 4 in the afternoon, a duration, at least 30 days in solitary confinement. Then she does the thing responsible reporters do. Before publishing, she calls his team. And here is the part that matters more than anything else. They did not dispute it. Not a denial, not a statement, not a threat of legal action. According to her account, they told her they did not know either way, and they did not push back. Now let's be precise, because this is where other channels lie to you. A team that says nothing is not a team that says yes. Silence is not confirmation. It is not proof, but context matters. This is a legal team that has aggressively denied every single allegation for 2 straight years. Statements within hours, lawyers on television, press releases before the ink dried on the filing. When that machine suddenly has nothing to say, people notice. So what actually happened in that facility? Nobody outside those walls knows. And anyone telling you they have the full story is selling you something. The speculation is that it may have been self-defense, that an inmate was running his mouth, that someone brought up old case files or private knowledge or something Diddy was not willing to hear repeated out loud in front of a room. In a place where reputation is the only currency and gossip moves faster than staff can walk, that kind of confrontation ignites in seconds. But that is speculation, nothing more. What is not speculation is where he ended up. Solitary confinement. Reportedly 30 days minimum, and understand what that actually means because television has lied to you about it. It is not a bad room. It is one man, one space, roughly 23 hours a day, limited contact, limited movement, limited light. Meals through a slot. For a man who spent 3 decades physically unable to sit still, who built an entire empire on being in the room, being seen, being the reason the room existed, 30 days alone with nothing but his own thoughts, may be the harshest thing that has happened to him yet. And there is a version of this story where you almost feel something, until you remember how many people have been waiting a very long time for a moment exactly like this one.
Can you imagine if every artist that's ever been goddamn violated decided to settle their own score? How many dead bodies would we be cleaning up?
How many bodies would we be cleaning up? That is not a threat, it is a question. And it is the question that hangs over every single day he spends inside that building. And while all of that was happening around him, something else was happening to him. When Diddy appeared in court before sentencing, people who had watched him for 30 years struggled to recognize the man in the chair. Thinner, grayer, slower, diminished in a way that photographs could not fully capture. The first explanation offered was almost insulting in how small it was, that he simply missed the private chef, the trainers, the routine. Then the stories about the food started.
That's why he wanted to get out, so bad. But I think that they're gonna railroad Diddy. Do I think that there are maggots in the food? I mean, I won't trust anything when you of the stature of Diddy. Do I think they give every inmate maggot food? Probably not.
Notice how careful that answer is. He does not claim every inmate is being fed maggots. He says something much more damaging than that. He says he would not trust anything given to a man of Diddy's stature. That is a different accusation entirely. That is a man saying the system has reasons to make this particular inmate's life harder. And then, more recently, a much smaller story surfaced. One that got almost no attention, and one that says more about his condition than any rumor circulating online.
So apparently Diddy's knee has been bothering him recently, so he reported it. At some point, it was decided that he needed medical care outside of the jail. He was taken to a Brooklyn hospital.
His knee, he filed a complaint, it was reviewed, and at some point, the decision was made that the facility could not handle it and he needed medical care on the outside. So he was transported under guard to a hospital in Brooklyn. Think about that image against the one you had of him 10 years ago. Helicopters onto Miami rooftops, yachts, I-1s, a man who had a doctor's number in his phone and a doctor who answered it. Now he submits a request about his knee and waits for someone else to decide whether it qualifies. That is the part nobody prepares for. Everyone imagines prison as violence and fear. The people who have actually served time will tell you that what breaks men is not the fear, it is the powerlessness. Not being able to make a call when you want to make one. Not being able to see a doctor when your body is failing. Not being able to close a door. And here is what makes his situation different from almost anyone else's in that building. Because when they raided his properties, what they found became permanent public record.
And they seized cases and cases of the kinds of personal lubricant and baby oil that Combs' staff allegedly used to stock hotel rooms for the freak-offs. More than 1,000 bottles altogether.
Over 1,000 bottles. That number followed him through the trial, into the sentencing, and through those prison doors. It became the punchline. It became the meme. It became the shorthand that every inmate in that facility already knew before he ever arrived. He did not walk in as Sean Combs. He walked in as a joke that had already been told 1,000 times. And on the outside, the story he spent millions trying to close kept reopening.
Now people are open to hearing what has happened to me. People weren't ready to hear it 20 years ago. My name is Adria Cherie Marcy English, and I was hired in the early 2000s to be a go-go dancer at Diddy's private white parties. I looked up to Diddy. He was an icon. He was innovative. I had dreams and goals to be in the entertainment industry. And so when I got the opportunity to dance at the white parties, I really took it seriously. The first time I met him, he was very nice. I had special talent, special skill. They liked my energy. So it was a very great experience initially. After about the second or third party is when I got asked to do extra things more than dancing at the private white parties. It was more mingling more and being available if they wanted to participate in extras, I should say.
When you said that they started asking you to participate in extras, what do you mean?
He would bring me to people. Diddy would sit me with certain people and for me to entertain them. There were private areas and private rooms of the house that, I had to walk people to. And then, I was like...
These are not anonymous internet accounts. These are named individuals with filed complaints. Adria English, April Lampros, Crystal McKenna, different decades, different circumstances, different entry points into the same world, and a structure in the descriptions that keeps repeating. Access offered, mentorship promised, a career door held slightly open. Every one of these remains an allegation. None has been proven in court, and it is important that you hear that clearly. But each new filing lands on a man who is already inside, already isolated, and already trying to convince a legal system that he has changed. Which brings us to what his team is fighting for right now, while he sits in that cell. Because Diddy is not just serving his sentence, he is trying to erase it.
They tried to convince a panel of judges that the convicted rapper should be released immediately because the judge that sentenced him relied on things that Combs was not convicted of.
The evidence and the arguments just reaffirms in this case that that the evidence that the judge was relying on is totally separate and in fact was acquitted conduct.
The thing is, though, up until last year, judges actually were allowed to consider what is known as acquitted conduct that you heard the defense there talk about. Remember, last year, a judge sentenced Combs to 4 years and 2 months in prison. That was after a jury convicted Combs of transporting people across state lines but they acquitted him of the most serious charges of and conspiracy. We don't know when the judges are going to make a decision on this appeal, but the defense wants it done as fast as possible because Diddy is set to be released from prison in April of 2028.
The argument is technical, and it is not frivolous. His defense claims the judge leaned on conduct the jury acquitted him of when deciding the length of the sentence. For years, judges were permitted to weigh acquitted conduct. That changed recently. So his lawyers are asking an appeals court to rule that his sentence was built on ground that no longer exists and to release him immediately. Meanwhile, inside, reports say he has been doing everything a man does when he is building a case for early release. Working the laundry unit, completing programs, keeping his head down, and every leak undercuts it. Every solitary report, every fight, every new filing. His scheduled release date is April 2028. His team is fighting for something much sooner. Nobody knows when the court will rule. So this is where Sean Combs actually stands tonight. A cell he cannot leave. A body giving out in small, undignified ways. A reputation that arrived before he did. And a legal team arguing technicalities to a court that owes him absolutely nothing. He stood in that courtroom and called himself disgusting, shameful, and sick. He asked for mercy from the only person in the room who could give it. He did not get it. And the question now is not whether the court shows him mercy. The question is whether there is anyone left on the outside still willing to ask for it on behalf. Because from where he is sitting, it does not look like there is. If you made it this far, tell me in the comments. Does he serve every day of that sentence? Or does the appeal get him out early? And subscribe, because when that court rules, this story changes overnight.